Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma Preview Show. I'm your host, Michael Knight, the director of Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. And every single Wednesday here on the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma YouTube channel, we take a look at the upcoming week of high school football across the state. Coming up here on today's show, we'll be taking a look at the 10 best games across Oklahoma, and then we'll be taking a special look at the 5 best games. So we'll give you that big picture look at the 10 best games, but then we'll put a brighter spotlight on the top 5 matchups across the state of Oklahoma this week. We'll also be joined by 3 different coaches that'll be coaching in some of the better games across the state of Oklahoma, including Sand Springs head coach Bobby Klinck. We'll also be joined by Lawton MacArthur head coach Brett Manning, and then we'll finish things up with Broken Bow head coach Maverick Lang. And then, as we do each and every single week, following the coaches' conversations, we take a look at the 10 players to watch in some of the biggest games across the state this week. So our week 8 players to watch, again, with the 10 game breakdown with the players to watch, you can check out an article right now on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma on both of those things. Also, check out our 2028 prospect breakdowns. We have a ton of those up right now. Later on this week, we'll be releasing our updated rankings for the 2027 class. So that's something to keep an eye out on. For later on in the week. We'll be releasing our top 150 juniors in the state of Oklahoma later on this week. But let's dive into it. Let's go ahead and look at this week's 10 best games. And we start in Class 4A with Ada going on the road to take on Broken Bow. We've been talking about this district a lot in Class 4A for a while now, as you have 2 top 5 teams in this matchup. Number 3, Ada, going on the road to take on number 5, Broken Bow. Broken Bow's already suffered a loss in district play. They can't afford another one. For Ada, they look like the team to beat in this district right now, but there's so many tough games still left on the schedule for both of these teams. And I mentioned earlier, Broken Bow head coach Maverick Lang will be joining us here shortly. We'll take a more in-depth look at this matchup here in just a few minutes. Altus at Guthrie. This is a big matchup in Class 5A because now we find out just how serious Altus is. Altus is undefeated on the season. They debuted in the 5A top 10 this week, but they have not been tested in the way that they'll be tested on Friday night as they go on the road to take on the Guthrie Blue Jays, a team that played for the state championship a year ago. They're a top 5 team in this class. Bixby at Mustang is a game to watch in 6A1. On paper, it looks like 2 teams that will light up the scoreboard. Of course, we know that Bixby is the heavyweight in this matchup, as they have been destroying everybody. We'll dive into this matchup a little bit more later on in the show. We'll also do the same with Collinsville at Pryor, another marquee matchup in Class 5A featuring those 2 programs. Staying in 5A, we have Lawton MacArthur at Newcastle. This is an intriguing matchup, and we'll talk more about it with Lawton Mac head coach Brett Manning later on in the show. But Newcastle, Lawton Mac, both of these teams look like teams that can win the district championship, but there's still undefeated Bishop McGuinness. That'll have something to say about that later on this season. In Class 2A1, a game that I'll be at on Friday night, Mount St. Mary at Jones. We'll dive into that matchup a little bit more later on. In my opinion, the game of the week takes place in Stillwater for the second straight week. The Pioneers will host a top 4 team. As they beat Choctaw last week, they face Putnam City this week. We'll talk about that matchup a little later. And then back to 4A, we mentioned it with Ada and Broken Bow. Those 4 teams, Ada, Broken Bow, Sallisaw, and Poto. Coincidentally, they all play each other again this week, and this week it's Sallisaw going on the road to take on Poto. Sallisaw still in the mix for a district championship. Poto can't afford another loss. And then finally in 6A2, Sand Springs going on the road to take on Muskogee. How serious is Sand Springs as a state championship contender? We'll find out a lot about that as they go on the road to try to take down Muskogee. And later on in the show, head coach Bobby Klinck will be joining us. In fact, in about 5-10 minutes from now, right after we're done with the top 5 game countdown, Coach Klinck will be joining us. But let's go into the top 5 countdown, and we start in 2A1. It's the game that I'm going to be at on Friday night. Real interested to see what happens here, as you have number 2 Jones hosting number 7 Mount St. Mary. And for Jones, it's an opportunity to continue to flex their muscle. That's all they've done so far this season. This is a team that has a showdown with OCS coming up later on in the season. OCS is undefeated as well in this district, but coming into the season, we knew that this district was going to be tough. You had Jones, you had Mount St. Mary, you had OCS. We can't really forget about Millwood, even though it's a bit of a down season for them. But Millwood just beat Mount St. Mary in the final minute of that game last week. So Mount St. Mary suffering their first loss on the year last week. Now they have to go on the road to take on a Jones team that looks like the team in 2A1 that could end up challenging Washington for the state championship. Now we're a long ways away from that. In fact, they might end up on the same side of the bracket. I don't have that info in front of me, but that could very well happen. And if it does, you could see a situation where the top two teams in this class face off before the state championship game. For Mount St. Mary, it's bounce back time. I mean, it's as simple as that. I think that they have something really special brewing there. But this is a whole nother level of competition. They saw it a little bit last week against Millwood. But we saw Jones absolutely smash Millwood earlier this season. So for Mount St. Mary, it's an opportunity to see it's the ultimate measuring stick game. How serious are you as a true contender in 2A1 if you're the Rockets? You're going to find out on Friday because the Longhorns are a really talented team, a really experienced team. They're used to winning. They're used to winning a lot of games and making deep runs into the playoffs, and that just quite hasn't been the case for Mount St. Mary. So it is the ultimate measuring stick game for head coach J.D. Runnels and the rest of the Rockets. But this is a team that is playing good football this season, and I think the arrow is pointing up. You look at that roster, and a lot of their top players are juniors or even sophomores. So this is a team that's going to be good this season, and they're going to be good for the next few seasons as well. For Jones, it's a senior-led team. They're the favorite coming in, but I haven't seen them in person this season. I saw them in a scrimmage back in August. I saw Mount St. Mary back in the spring. Good opportunity to see two top 10 teams in this class, and especially on the side for the Longhorns, an opportunity to continue to show that they are that true top challenger to knocking off Washington and ending their reign of terror in Class 2A and then now Class 2A1. Our number 4 game, we go up to Class 5A. It's number 3 Pryor hosting number 8 Collinsville. So for the Pryor Tigers, they remain undefeated on the season. They come in at 7-0 this week. They take on a Collinsville team that's 6-1, and Pryor, they have been challenged quite a bit this season. Both teams really have been challenged, but for Pryor, this looks like it's a special season. All signs are pointing to this being a special season for Pryor. Obviously, this is a huge game on Friday night, but there is that showdown looming. I believe it's in week 10, and it's not coming up next week, where they will take on Del City, and that's number 2 versus number 3 in Class 5A. Two teams that look like they have the ability to win the state championship. And I'll just throw this out right now. Whoever finishes second in this district might be, in a better shape come playoff time, because the winner is going to be on the same side of the bracket as top ranked Carl Albert. And so we saw it last year with Del City. Del City was probably the second best team in Class 5A, and they ran into Carl Albert in the semifinals, and they didn't get a chance to play for the state championship. Now, they probably would have played Carl Albert for the state title if they finished second in the district. But just something to think about. It's only week 8. We still have a few more weeks here in the regular season before we start talking playoffs. On the other side of the matchup, you have Collinsville, and I'm really impressed with them, man. This is a team that has a unique mix of veteran seniors that, they went through some growing pains last year, dealing with injuries, dealing with nagging stuff that kept them sidelined. But this year, they've been playing really well. The only loss on the season coming on a final last-second field goal against Del City on the road. Collinsville is a team that is more than capable of going on the road and knocking off Pryor. It'll be a little bit of a clash of styles, as Collinsville is led by one of the better running backs in Class 5A, while Pryor has one of the better quarterbacks in Class 5A. So these two teams do things a little differently. But it should be a very fun matchup to watch on Friday night. Our number 3 game, we go up to 6A1, and on paper, this looks like it could be a very fun matchup. It's number 1 Bixby going on the road to take on number 5 Mustang. But let's just speak openly and honestly. Bixby has been absolutely destroying everybody this season. So just how competitive will it be when they go on the road to take on Mustang? On paper, like I said, on paper, both of these teams look really talented. There's no doubt that they are. I mean, both sides have multiple guys that are going to be playing at the Division One level. But the Spartans, they're the defending champs. They've won 7 state championships in a row. They've been so dominant this season. Everybody's talking about the game last week when they're beating Enid 92-0. It's a matchup where Bixby can continue to show the state just how dominant they are. And it's one thing to beat Enid 92-0. You're not going to go on the road and beat Mustang 92-0, but I do think that Bixby is hands down the best team in 6A1. For Mustang, this is your opportunity, right? The Broncos have been knocking on that door. They have a roster that's full of guys that are going to be playing at the next level and playing Division One football. They've been wanting this opportunity to prove to the state of Oklahoma that they are here. They're ready to take that next step and become that true state championship contender. Well, here you go, because you got the Bixby Spartans coming to town. This is the ultimate test when you're talking about 6A1 because Bixby is the king of this class right now. So if you're Mustang, a great opportunity at home in front of the home fans to get a big win. And man, would that be a big win. It would send shockwaves through the state of Oklahoma. But, look, they have the firepower. They have the firepower, they have the quarterback, they have the offensive skill talent to put some points up on the board. If it ends up being a very high scoring game, that might favor Mustang. But Bixby is not going to back down. They're more than capable of lighting up the scoreboard as well. So it should be a fun game in 6A1. Our number 2 game in Class 4A, Ada at Broken Bow. That's number 3 Ada going on the road to take on number 5 Broken Bow. And for the Cougars, they're undefeated on the season. They look like a team that is destined to defend that district championship that they won a year ago. Speaking of teams that can light up the scoreboard, they can do things in so many different ways offensively that just puts so much stress on the opposing defense. Ada looks like one of the teams to beat in Class 4A, but it's an interesting class in 4A where all the talk, and rightfully so, I'm going to be honest, rightfully so, all the talk is about Elgin and Tuttle, possibly making it back to the state championship game and having a rematch from last year. But I'm telling you, the 4 teams that make it out of this district are going to be battle tested. They're all going to be talented and they're all going to be ready to make a run once November rolls around and once the playoffs begin. And on the other side, you have Broken Bow. And whenever Broken Bow takes the field and they have that special quarterback, Graydon Howell, the junior dynamic QB that I've been talking about for a little over a year now, how he might be the most electric football player, regardless of position, regardless of class in the state of Oklahoma. Anytime you have him on the football field, you have a chance to win the game. It's as simple as that. He's one of the best players in Oklahoma, and anytime he's on the field, you have a chance to win the game. The winner of this game is going to be in a solid position. For Ada, it's just one step closer to the district championship. For Broken Bow, they've already lost a game in district play, so they can't afford another one as they try to close out the regular season with several wins to take some momentum into the playoffs. And then finally, our game of the week for the second straight week, Stillwater is going to be playing in that number 1 game as the top-ranked Pioneers will host number 3 Putnam City. Both of these teams coming into this game at 6-1, but more importantly, both teams coming into this game undefeated in district play. For the Stillwater Pioneers, they're coming off a huge win over defending champion Choctaw last week. They won 21-14. That was a game where they were able to jump out 21-0 at halftime. They took advantage of a Choctaw mistake in the first quarter. Stillwater went down and scored, made it 7-0, and then Choctaw fumbled away the ensuing kickoff. Stillwater recovers. They go down the field and score again. All of a sudden, it's 14-0. They made it 21-0 before halftime. And that was a hole that was just too much for Choctaw to overcome. The Yellow Jackets actually played well in the second half, made a push, had an opportunity to tie it up a couple of times there in the second half, but they weren't able to do it. Stillwater's running game is something to watch. Their QB, their running back, 2 very good football players, 2 very good players that can, absolutely light it up with the ground game. While on the other side, you have Putnam City that has a really strong defense, especially that front seven. They have multiple guys within the front seven that are going to end up playing Division One football in one way or another. It's going to be fun to watch this matchup because I think that Putnam City has what it takes, man. They might have been an underdog coming into this season. A lot of the talk, including by us, I'll throw my hand up. I was one of the ones that's saying Stillwater, Choctaw, those were the two top teams in this district. And, the district goes through them and possibly 6A2 goes through them. But Putnam City is certainly going to have something to say about that. They already beat Choctaw earlier this season. They have an opportunity to go on the road and send a emphatic statement to the rest of Class 6A2 that maybe the Pirates are the true team to beat in Class 6A2. Speaking of 6A2, that takes a look at our top 5 games across the state in week 8, but we're going to stay with the conversation in 6A2 as our next guest. Sand Springs head coach Bobby Klinck is set to join us now here on the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma Preview Show. And coach, let's start off with the way the season started. A lot of talk was centered around the schedule that you guys played specifically in those first 2 weeks. You opened the season against, Bixby, which is, the measuring stick right now in Oklahoma high school football. You follow that up with another tough game against Owasso. Now that we're, over a month removed from it, you're able to see, the results of testing yourself against the best of the best. What were you able to take away, and what have you learned about your team, and what has this team learned about themselves following those tough openers?
I really think week 1 to week 2 we got a lot better. Obviously playing Bixby your first game, we got it taken to us a little bit. Didn't perform well. Of course, they've been beating everybody like that. So the fact that we held them under 60 points, I was pretty happy about that. But they get into Owasso, who's obviously another perennial power, who's done very well. I thought we played a great first half. I thought we fought at one point. It's 28-17. We got an opportunity, for a fourth down, and they convert, and then they kind of lean on us from there. But I think in that second week, I could kind of tell our kids, like, hey, man, we belong to play with some of the best teams in the state. And I think we've continued to do that throughout this season. So, obviously just getting our kids better each week and learning our schemes and system and everything, I think that's been huge for us.
Now, when we're talking about Sand Springs players, we have to start the conversation with Easton Webb. In my opinion, he's one of the best quarterbacks in Oklahoma. In fact, it's kind of a coincidence we're having you on this week because I asked you about him on the field the week of the Muskogee game before, about an hour before the Muskogee game last season, because
Yeah.
his jump from his sophomore season to what we saw last year as a junior was one of the best, single season jumps that I've seen in a while. You talked about his growth from sophomore year to junior year. What have you seen from him this season now that he's a 4-year starter? He's legitimately one of the best quarterback prospects in this part of the country that's still available, by the way. What can you say about Easton Webb that you haven't already said before?
Just we I talked about the biggest leap is usually from sophomore to junior year, and he obviously made that this year. Just his mental game. He's got so much on his plate in terms of baseball and recruiting and football and stuff, but you wouldn't know that with him. He just likes to be around the guys. He likes to play for Sand Springs. He's a guy that's loyal. I'm sure there were some people that wanted him to move, and I'm sure he had some opportunities to move, and he said, "Nope, I'm going to stay here because, and that's a big deal these days, with all the movement and everything." So, I think just his mentality of football, of being a great leader for his teammates. I think that's where I've seen the biggest leap for him.
His number one target is Dom Forbes,
Yeah,
and recently he set the career receiving yard mark, starting to rewrite all the records for a wide receiver at Sand Springs, which is
yeah,
insane because he's only a junior. So
yeah.
he still has next year to continue to pad those numbers. Just talk about him because I watch him and look, measurable wise and like, testing and like all that combine stuff. Like, I don't know that he is going to test off the charts. but you put on the film, you look at the production, you see him in person go against some of the better defensive
Yep.
backs in the state, and this guy produces week after week at a very high level. He has been a huge part of what you guys have been able to do offensively and has been, the number one target for Easton.
Yeah, no, he's a stud. I mean, he's a. I'll say it right. He's a white receiver, so everyone's going to say, "Hey, he runs great routes. He's got great hands." I'm going to tell you this: he's fast. Ask Choctaw if he's fast. He catches a 94-yard slant on him and scores, and no one's catching him. We're going to put him in track this year. He's going to run a great time. He's got all the measurables. He's one of our fastest players. He's the hardest worker. He's tough. He's got everything. So it's a matter of time before people start catching on. So I'm excited to see that happen, and he's just going to keep doing what he's doing. He's going to be productive. He's going to make plays. He's going to moss people. It's just who he is.
This is the part of the coaches conversation where coaches either hate it because they think that they're going to forget some kids, or they love it because it gives it, they'll take
Yeah.
10 minutes to talk about their kids. Tell me about some guys that we haven't talked about yet. I mean, everybody knows about Easton Webb and Dom
Yep.
Forbes and,
Sure.
Emery Smittick on the defensive side of the ball. Talk to me about some of the guys that are having those breakout seasons that, have been a big part of what you guys have been able to do this season that maybe we didn't know about, a couple months ago.
I'm glad you asked that. Let me grab my sheets here right now. No, I mean Emery Smittick. He's a linebacker that if he was a couple inches taller, he'd be everybody would be after him. He produces. He makes tackles. He's physical. He's smart. He's fantastic. And then his partner in crime that we moved from safety is Brock Odell, who when you look at him, he's a legitimate 6 foot 6'1" guy who's 200 plus. He actually clocked in as the fastest guy on our football team. So you put him at a linebacker with that type of speed. He's played. He was a receiver, then he was a safety, and now we put him at linebacker. And I think we finally found his niche. His name is going to be called a lot coming up this Friday, defensively. Then we got a kid named Grady Harris, who's a junior. Who's a starter as a sophomore at defensive end, who's also going to be playing tight end H back for us. He's been incredibly productive. Alex Dudley, who just committed to Northeastern State, has been a 3-year starter at safety. He's been a 3-year captain. Just incredible guys, and I think we've got two really good corners, in Trey Pope and then Junior Ballard. This is about as athletic as a team that we've had. I think we've always had, the thing about Sand Springs is you got tough kids. Our mentality is like that. I think our athleticism has really caught up, and I think that's why you're seeing some of the scores we've had this year.
Now, let's talk about the program as a whole, because when
Yeah,
you're talking about 6A2, ever since Big Bad Bixby moved up to 6A1, it's been like, who's going to be that
yeah,
next team to take over 6A2? And we've seen Stillwater win it. We've seen Choctaw win it. We've seen Muskogee win it. We're waiting for that moment for Sand Springs to
sure.
finally, make that trip to Edmond. Where is this program at right now? Because from my vantage point, and obviously I'm on the outside looking in, but I think you're right there with those other programs that I mentioned. You just haven't had the opportunity to kick that door down. It looks like this year could be a year you guys do that. From your vantage point, where do you think this program is at?
I do believe we're there. We obviously we've got to get better and we've got to prove it. But I do think we have the talent and the team to push those other programs who've gotten it done. Obviously, we kind of knocked at the door last year, being in the semis and being up against Choctaw at halftime, but then they came back on us and got us. I've just told these guys, we've got to take the next step, and part of that is just, when we're playing against teams that we should handle, we got to handle them. And I think we've gotten better at that. I wasn't happy last week. We're going against Putnam City West, and we're screwing up some of our shifts and some of our emotions and stuff. And I call timeouts like, hey, we got to get this right. This is not, it's, I told the kids this week in a meeting that it's like when you become saved. I've been saved with my Christian faith, and you think, oh, life's going to get easier, and it's not, because you can kind of, everything that you do wrong now stands out a lot more because of where you're at. That's what I told these guys. It's, this program is where everything needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be, rock solid. And I think that's where we're at. And I think they're starting to understand that.
Now, one of those teams that you have to knock down to continue climbing that ladder is Muskogee. This
Yep.
is a very different Muskogee team. Let's just, speak honestly from the last couple of years where they're contending for state champion. You don't lose a guy like Jamarian Ficklin and get better the year after. So, a very different Muskogee team. You have to go to Muskogee this week. District championship could be on the line on Friday night. When you look at this Muskogee team, like I mentioned, it's a lot different than what you've seen the last few years. But what stands out to you about the Ruffers in 2025?
I'm scared. You sure he's not there? We've seen him for 4 years. I mean, I was last year. I was like, "Are you graduated yet? Would you please leave?" And obviously, he's had tremendous success at the next level already. But you kind of watch the maturation of this team. You kind of see, they were trying to find their footing. They had a really tough non-district schedule, just like us. They kind of took their lumps. They were trying to figure out personnel and all these things. I think they've done that. They had new schemes, new everything, and they're definitely finding their footing. They've become explosive offensively, defensively. They're running around fast. They're very sound. So I've kind of see them solidify some of their spots. Especially up front, offensive line wise, defensively, some in some of their positions. So I'm looking at that they're going to be the best that they've been when they play us coming up here.
Now, I didn't have this question written down, but you mentioned something a little bit earlier when talking about Easton that it has me curious, and I know that there's a lot of coaches that feel the same way as you do, and I just want to kind of open the conversation, open the dialogue. Movement, player movement has been. Look, it's always been a part of Oklahoma high
Yeah.
school football, but it's different now. It feels different. It looks different. From your vantage point, being at a program where guys can get picked out, all of a sudden you lose, one of your top guys, and he's here one day, he's gone the next. How do you approach it? Because coaching in high school football is so much different than it was even 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I'm going to coach the kids that want to be here. It's I tell I tell my kids this, or my kids, the players here, that I treat them like my kids. It's not easy playing here. We're going to coach you the way you need to be coached. I tell them I'm going to be the football coach that I think I needed when I was in high school. I'm not a guy that's going to go out and try to replace kids. That's not what I want to do. That's not why I got into high school coaching. I think other coaches that are doing that, it is what it is. They've got to do what they got to do. They've got to put their head on their pillow at night. I sleep just fine. Trust me. It's I love coaching the kids here at Sand Springs. The kids that we've had come here, they understand that if you come here, A, I didn't recruit you, and B, you better step up and play. Nothing's going to get handed to you around here. So whether I'm whether I'm causing kids not to want to come here or what, I don't care. I want to coach the kids that are all about black and gold. And hopefully that takes place because when I was in high school, Kewan Jones moved in and everyone thought that I was going to move. I was like, no, I ain't going anywhere. I'm going to compete. We're going to figure this thing out. And it turned out to be one of the best things that's ever happened for me. So I can't fault people for moving if they think they can get a better opportunity for themselves. But I'm not going to be a guy that's going to sit here and try to, recruit other kids and make myself better or make this place better off the backs of kids that haven't gone through the football program, who haven't put in the time and effort that other kids have.
Very well said. A lot, like I said at the beginning, I think that a lot of coaches probably feel that way. A lot of coaches are having to deal with a new landscape of high school football that, 5 years ago we didn't think
Yeah.
was going to be necessary. But there's one thing for sure: it's probably not going to slow down anytime soon.
Sure.
But Coach, thanks so much for your time today. Good luck on
Got it.
Friday night as you guys try to take down the Ruffers. And if you're not following Coach Klinck on social media, one of the best coaches follows
Yeah.
in the state of Oklahoma today. I can guarantee you that. But Coach, thanks so much for your time and good luck Friday. All right.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you.
He's Sand Springs head coach Bobby Klinck, and now we go from 6A2 down to 5A, another huge district matchup. Lawton MacArthur taking on Newcastle. Talk about a game that might end up deciding a district championship. And we're joined now by head coach Brett Manning of the Lawton MacArthur Highlanders. And coach, on paper, your squad is incredibly talented. You got multiple guys that are going to be playing at the Division 1 level next year. You got a very underrated junior running back that we'll get into in a little bit. How would you grade your team so far? You've won 6 in a row following that opening season loss to defending 4A champ Elgin.
Well, I feel good about us. I think we started off week 0 against Elgin. Very, very good opponent, and I was a little disappointed at how we performed. But sometimes you learn a lot when you lose, and we went back to work, and feel like we fixed some things, and have continued to improve each week. So, I feel good about where we are, and like you said, these next 3 weeks are going to really determine how we go into the playoffs, and what position we're in the playoffs, and what kind of chance we have of making a deep run. So yeah, we're geared up. This is what it's all about. This is the fun part about it, is playing the good competition and trying to get in and compete for a district championship.
I mentioned those guys that are going to play Division 1 football. Adam Austin, Joshua Rushing. Rushing committed to Tulsa. Austin was committed to Arkansas. Now he is one of the most highly sought after recruits in the state's 2026 class. They have been playing for the Highlanders forever. It feels
Yeah.
like they played early on in their career. What have you seen from them this season that's different? Compared to the last few years, because like I mentioned, they played so early on in their careers and they're obviously very talented football players. But what kind of growth have you seen from those two guys this season?
Yeah, they, like you said, both of them, they've been playing since they were freshmen. They started the last couple of games their freshman year and have been starters ever since. And just steady improvement throughout the years. They're both obviously, they've got the Division 1 body but what people don't see is their leadership ability. As coaches, everybody knows that sometimes your best athletes are your high maintenance guys, and your guys that you really have to get on about being on time and working hard and stuff like that. And these guys are not like that. They are some of the hardest workers, some of the best leaders, best teammates that anybody can ask for. They've been a real blessing to me and our entire football program. But as far as this year goes, I think the main difference is both of them are playing on both sides of the ball, and they've both kind of dabbled in it a little bit. Josh has always been a receiver who's played a little bit of defensive back. Adam's always been the safety who's played a little bit of receiver, but now they're both starting on both sides of the ball and doing a great job on the other side too.
Offensively, you have a 3-year starter at quarterback. You have those weapons at wide receiver. But man, I want to talk about Connor Claiborne because that kid is very fun to watch.
Yeah.
He just went over 1,000 yards on the season last week, had another big performance on the ground. And, I've seen him in person a couple of times, whether it was, the Elgin game last year or in the spring at team camps. And I just love watching him run the football because he runs it with a very physical. I mean, we're talking about team camp. We're not hitting as hard as we would in the fall. He's hitting as hard as he would in the fall. Just talk about him a little bit because I think he's one of the more underrated running backs in the state of Oklahoma. He's not talked about enough, but man, you look at the production, you look at the running style, and he's a guy who gets the job done.
He is, and another good kid who puts in the work. That's he's not, honestly, he's not a whole lot to look at. If he just walks up to you in his street clothes, you wouldn't think that he could do the stuff that he does on the football field. But very dedicated to the weight room and has been since he was really young. And he's a patient runner. He's a hard runner, and he's somebody that is a lot stronger than people think. And he's proven that a couple of times with some very physical runs that he's had. But just a great kid who's very intelligent and does a good job of picking the right hole. And when he feels like that's the spot for him to fit in, well, he really goes. So he's really good, and our offensive line's done a great job for him too.
Now, here's the part of the conversation where we just start naming some dudes. I want to talk about, some of the guys that, have been playing really well on both sides of the ball. Maybe some guys that, we didn't know about a couple months ago, whether it was in August or July, and they're having breakout seasons this year. Who on both sides of the ball have really been standing out so far. We know about the stars, we know about the guys that are
Yeah.
scoring the touchdowns, but who are some other guys who have stood out for the Highlanders this year?
Well, defensively, Gunnar Tate has been really good for us. He's a 2-year starting linebacker, and he has battled some injuries and has had to sit out a couple of games, but keeps coming back. And man, when he's in there, he's just the quarterback of our defense, getting us lined up and making a lot of tackles. We've got a young kid, Eagles Masit, who's a sophomore, who has done a really good job this year too. Big hitter, plays that other linebacker spot with Gunner, and got a few freshmen who are playing that doesn't happen for us very often, and we've got a defensive end, Princeton Salazar, and an offensive guard in Gage Jones, and even another linebacker who's taken Gunner's spot when he's been out, Tristan Kibble, and all those guys have very, very bright futures for us. Offensively, I think offensive line wise has been a really bright spot. We ended the season last year losing not only 4 of our 5 starters, but like 8 of our top 10. We're all seniors last year, and we've had to piece that group together. And 10 months ago, we were scratching our heads in the coach's office saying, "What are we going to do?" But we've had some guys that have really stepped up and have. We're thinking that's going to be a weak spot of our team, and we've got all these. We've got 2 Division I guys to throw the ball to, but how are we going to protect and all that? And they have come together and done an absolutely phenomenal job.
Now let's get you out of here by talking about Newcastle this week. But the bigger picture is these last 3 weeks. You got Newcastle on Friday night on the road. Then you take on Southeast next week, and then you have Bishop McGuinness, who's undefeated, to wrap up the regular season again on the road. 2 out of the last 3 games away from home against the 2 toughest district opponents that you got. You mentioned it earlier, here in this conversation. It doesn't get better than this. Well, it also gets tougher.
Yeah.
It also doesn't get much tougher than this, because I gotta feel like from a coach's perspective, from a player's perspective, it has to feel like now, even though it's week 8, we still got 3 more regular season games. It feels a whole heck of a lot like playoff games when you consider the big picture aspects. It starts this week with Newcastle.
Yeah, and Newcastle's a really good team. I think Coach Brickman does a great job. Since they've come up to 5A, and to where we pay more attention to them, being in our district and everything. They've just had a great run. They've got good kids. They play hard. They've got a good scheme on both sides of the ball, and definitely going to be a challenge.
Now, when talk about the approach in these final 2 weeks or final 3 weeks, where like I mentioned, it's still the regular season. You guys are more than I mean, I believe you've already clinched a playoff spot. You're going to be in the postseason, but do these games feel like playoff games, knowing that a district championship is on the line, a higher seed is on the line? Do you approach it like a playoff game, even though it's not, you lose and you're done, but at the same time, it can really set you up for a whole heck of a lot better of a run in November.
Probably in all of the coaches' heads and probably the kids' heads too. Yeah, that's the case. We just, uh, I, I've always, in my whole career, I've just told our kids that, we're not asking you to win. We're asking you to prepare hard. We're asking you to go out there with a great attitude, give great effort, make plays, have fun, and the winning's going to take care of itself. So, it's not that we're putting a whole lot of pressure on them to win. We're putting pressure on them to be the best they can be and give great effort, and we'll see what happens. So, but yeah, they're important games. They're when you look at the big picture, they're going into the playoffs with the district that we match up against. It's very important to at least finish in the top half of the district.
There's no doubt about that. Coach, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank
Good
you.
luck on Friday. Six straight wins after a tough opening season loss to Elgin. You guys have played some great football over the last 2 months. Looking forward to what happens in this, last 3 week stretch, and it starts on Friday against Newcastle. Thanks so much for your time and good luck Friday. All right.
Thank you.
From southwestern Oklahoma with Lawton MacArthur to southeastern Oklahoma to Broken Bow, Maverick Lang joins us, the head coach of the Broken Bow Savages. And coach, normally we start these conversations off with, a look at the team and things like that. But I just want to jump right into it and talk about Graydon Howell because your quarterback is, I've said it about a million times over the last year and a half. He might be the most electric football player in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah, he's a freak, man. He gives us a fighting chance every time we snap the ball to him. He's really dynamic on the ground, his running ability and what he brings to the game with his legs. But he's really had a growth mentally and physically throwing the football, comprehending what defense is trying to do. A year in our offense, structurally what we're trying to accomplish through the air. So that's what I've been most proud of him, of his growth, and most impressed with. He's, knock on wood, he's not putting the ball in harm's way as much as he kind of did last year. And that comes with a better understanding of what we're trying to do and his abilities. And the skill guys that we got running around making plays, receiver-wise, does a real good job.
Talk about his growth this year because, this time last year he was – he had just joined the football team earlier in the year. He, was known more for what he's able to do on the basketball floor, also a standout baseball player as well. Fast forward to right now, and he's turning like I see all the time on social media. He has Division I offers at like 4 different positions at this point. But his growth as a quarterback and just as a overall football player, it has to be, astronomical from this time last year.
Oh yeah, and yeah, like you touched on, before last season, it was 7th grade before or since he put a helmet on, and it was throwing that big of a gap and throwing him kind of to the wolves at quarterback position, a really tough district. But he fought through it last year, and there was a lot of growing pains that he had to go through, and we had to go through as a whole team, not just him, last season. But the mental maturity of him, and he's taking it personal. Like when we watch film, even now, like in practice, when he makes a mistake, he knows as soon as he lets it go, the mistake he made. So he's self-correcting himself pretty quickly, which is good. And but yeah, the total maturity, and he's obviously so gifted. Last year we seen, and I'm assuming that his whole athletic career, not just football, he hasn't had to struggle much because he's so dang gifted. And that was a low growing pain for him too. Is not everything coming as easy at times, and he had to fight through that mentally. And he's a lot better on that scale this year too.
That's a great transition to the next thought I had, which was the team as a whole, because last year, you guys went 6-4 and you won some games that should make you a playoff team in most years. But we'll talk a little bit about the district and how just, how brutal it is week in and week out. But, talk to me about this year's team where they know, like, look, man, we got to take care of business. We can't, slip up too many times because it'll be just like last year where we feel like we're good enough to be a playoff team, but we're on the outside looking in once the playoffs start.
Yeah, and we told our kids, we meet on Sundays with them. We told them yesterday, first thing when we met with them, we're in the same exact boat as we were last year, 6-1 now. Our loss last year was non-district. We got a loss in district play this year. But how's this team, how much we're fixing to see how much growth and maturity, the leadership we got on this team compared to the last, which a bunch of them kids that we got running around, they were on the field for last season's team. And the practice, the way we approach practice, our kids mentally, and that Sallisaw game, you obviously don't want to lose the game, but there's actually been a lot of good come from that loss. It allowed us to have some conversations with our kids as coaches, and it's really changed the mentality of our kids and how we approach day to day. We're not concerned at all with outside expectations. It's more internal, and then every Friday night we're looking to prove to ourselves how good we are and our ability instead of trying to prove it to somebody else.
Now, let's talk about this district, man, because I feel like basically all season there have been 4 teams ranked in the top 6 in Class 4A, and obviously when you're talking about that, it's an absolute grind. You have, yourself, Broken Bow, Ada, Salisaw, Poto is on the rise with a first-year head coach. They're going to be a problem, continuing to be a problem over the next several years. But when you look at the grind of what this district is, I got to think that it could help you down the line when you talk about, possibly making it to the playoffs and making a potentially deep run.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been referring it to the SEC of 4A. It's brutal, and you mentioned Hilldale. We got a lot of really good, talented kids.
Yeah.
Glenpool, they haven't won a game yet, but they've been playing people extremely close. Stillwell is the same. McLean. So, I mean, top to bottom, there's no. You're stumbling into each week. Once you get out of one tough one, you stumble into the next one. There's nobody on our schedule that you're looking. Well, I can't wait till week 6 gets around here, week 7, so we can kind of lighten the load for us. But yeah, there's loaded with the talent we got in our district, the coaching. We got real high level coaching on all our teams in our district. But it's exciting because you're getting an extremely good coached athletic team every Friday to play against, and like you noted, it helps. I think any team that all 4 of our teams that make the district out of our playoffs out of our district has that semi advantage of having to run through the gauntlet to get to the playoffs.
It's interesting. We see it from time to time. I think we saw it in one of the districts from Class 3A last year where, all 4 playoff teams from the same district sweep first round games. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that again with this district in Class 4A. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. When you make it to the playoffs, that first round game might feel like okay, now we can take a breath. The competition not as tough as what we've been used to over the last 2 months. I said that. Coach Lang didn't say that. Coach, we talked about Graydon and just how special he is, and that part's obvious. But look, one player doesn't make a football team. You have plenty of guys around him that help him not only succeed, but they're having good seasons as well. Let's talk about some of those guys on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, who have been standing out around Graydon that has made this such a special season so far for Broken Bow.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is the guy that stands directly next to him, Jatarius Neal. Also, he goes by Snooty. He's a junior running back. He's really, really, really progressed on his running vision and how he runs the football. He's he's just over 750 rushing yards for us, just under 300 yards receiving. So he's also dynamic out of the backfield when we get him out. But he's a great teammate. And then we got obviously Dejon Hall, our sophomore. He led our team in receiving last year as a freshman. He's a sophomore. He was the outside receiver. Now he plays slot most of the time, but we do move him around. He still plays some outside. He gives us a great opportunity to make plays out in space. Khalil, another sophomore receiver. He's been gone. He missed 2 games. 2 games early. He played the first game, then he was out for 2 games because of a non-football related injury, but it's been good getting him back. Then our offensive line, there's 4 new faces up there. Non-district games against Durant, MacArthur, Idabel are huge for them to get continuity there. And we tried to establish a pretty physical run game in those non-district games to help us out to be able to survive in this district we're in. And they've done a great job playing with each other from an offensive line standpoint. And then defensively, first cat comes to mind from the defense, our middle linebacker, Cade Pratt. He looks like somebody's dad out there practicing with us. Great kid. What you want in a middle linebacker. He's extremely physical, and he's athletic enough to play sideline to sideline for us. And D-line, we're getting a lot of good reps out of because we're forefront, but we got about 7 to 8 kids that we can rotate through there and not fall off, which is huge for us on Friday night. And then our secondary, we got a lot of experience back there. We got Scott Baker back. He got hurt first series, second half against MacArthur, and he finally got back in pads this last week against Hilldale, and he's huge. He's our leader in the back end, secondary, great playmaker. So it's huge getting Sky Baker back.
We got to talk about Ada. Obviously, a big game this week. Another top 5 matchup that you guys had or have as you look towards the ultimate goal of making it back to the playoffs. When I look at this matchup, Coach, I see two teams that can absolutely light up the scoreboard. Two teams with very dynamic offenses, great quarterback play. It seems like we could see a high-scoring affair on Friday night. When you look at Ada on film, what stands out to you about the matchup this week?
Yeah, and they do. I got a lot of respect for Coach Bulls, Coach Foster, and Roark, the two coordinators. They do a great, phenomenal job with them. Their kids are really coached well, and they got a lot of playmakers, a lot of experience on that team on both sides of the football. From an offense standpoint, quarterback, 4-year starter. He's got the ability to really stretch you as a defense, secondary wise, and they got really good skill kids running around making plays. And they do want to run the football physically. So they pose a dilemma for you because they run the ball really well and then they throw it around really well too. It'd be nice if they just did one of those things really well and the other one not so much. But they do a good job there. And defensively, a lot of experience. And when I seen him for the first time last year, I'm drawing blank on his name. He was 30 last year. He's 0 this year. Their middle linebacker. I love the way he plays. He finds the ball. Not the biggest kid, but plays extremely well. And he's one that you got to account for in the run game or pass game if you want to be able to get first downs against them. But D-line wise, they're big physical kids, and they got really good athletic kids in the secondary roaming around. Choose too from a defense standpoint.
Coach, thanks so much for your time this week. Good luck on Friday, and good luck as you guys wrap up the regular season. And we'll see how the cards fall. But man, this district has been a fun one to watch from the outside. I don't know how the coaches feel, coaching in it every single week, but it's been a very entertaining, very physical, and very fun district to watch so far this season. Thanks so much for your time, and good luck Friday. All right.
Appreciate it.
Now, I joked with Coach before this that it's just a coincidence, but our next segment is our Week 8 players to watch, and we're kicking things off with the quarterback that Coach Lang and the Savages are going to try to slow down on Friday night. That's Ada quarterback Brock Boyles. He kicks off this week's players to watch. Brock Boyles is one of the more experienced starting quarterbacks in Class 4A as he looks to lead Ada to another win. They're 7-0 on the season, and you just heard from Coach Lang how Boyles is a quarterback, and this offense in general is so hard to slow down. But with Boyles, he's a big play threat, man. You look at the film, you look at some of the highlights, and he's able to push the ball downfield. He has weapons at the wide receiver position. And like I said, he's so experienced. He's seen just about everything. He went through growing pains as a freshman and a sophomore, and really over the last 2 seasons, he's been one of the top quarterbacks in Class 4A and really in the state's 2026 class. So Boyles and the Ada Cougars are a team and an offense that have the capability of lighting up the scoreboard. We could end up seeing a lot of points in this matchup. It's a great QB matchup. Boyles, though, one of the players to watch in this one and in Class 4A in general. Lawton MacArthur running back Connor Claiborne is our next player to watch, and I mentioned him with our conversation with Coach Manning at Lawton Mac, how this is a tough dude at the running back position. Like I mentioned, he went over 1,000 yards on the season last in their win last week, and for Lawton Mac, this is the start of a 3-week stretch where, like I mentioned with Coach Manning, it feels a whole heck of a lot like the playoffs. You face a Newcastle team that also has a standout running back, one of the better running backs in Class 5A. But Claiborne, he's playing with a lot of momentum right now. He's had a lot of really good performances since district play began. The Highlanders have been playing really good football. This is an offense that has weapons all over, but Claiborne continues to be an underrated part of what Lawton Mac does. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does this week against Newcastle, and it could make things very interesting in Class 5A with how the Highlanders finish this season. Muskogee wide receiver Jamie Beasley is our next player to watch. Muskogee figuring some things out now as they enter district play. There, you heard Coach Klinck earlier talk about Muskogee and how, similar to the Sandites, the Roughers played a really tough non-district schedule. Because of that, the record suffered. They started the season 0-3. They've won their last 4. Now they'll face no tougher of a test in district play than when they host Sand Springs on Friday night. But for Beasley, he's a big play wide receiver. He's coming off a game last week where he had over 200 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns, a big play threat in this Muskogee offense. And the Roughers, simply put, are starting to figure some things out. They've looked really good. But now here's a measuring stick game because Sand Springs has been the top team in this district since the start of the season. They've been the team to beat in this district since the start of the season. But Beasley, one of those players for the Roughers that knows what it takes to win a district championship, that knows what it takes to win a state championship and compete for a state title. So I'm thinking that he's going to have another big performance, or at least he's going to be a big key to what Muskogee tries to do on Friday night. Bixby running back Jason Mole is our next player to watch. Jason. He's a big play guy for this Bixby offense, and this is a Bixby offense that has plenty of big play potential. We mentioned it earlier when we were talking about this matchup against Mustang. The Spartans can score literally. I mean, last week against Enid, they put up touchdown after touchdown. I don't think they had a single drive in the first half where their offense was on the field for more than 3 plays. You talk about a team that can beat opponents just about in any way possible, and Jason is a big play threat at the running back position. He had a great career at Owasso over the last several years, and then he moves over to Bixby this season. He gives the Spartans a legitimate big play threat at the running back position. Looking forward to seeing what he does against Mustang. And for Mustang, if you're looking for a weakness with the Broncos, it might be the run defense, like stopping the run and being able to stop those big plays in the running game. And Jason certainly has the ability to torch a defense on the ground. So that's one area that I'm definitely looking at when you look at this matchup on Friday night. Altus quarterback Jamin Reed, the freshman sensation down there in southwestern Oklahoma. I mentioned this earlier, how we're about to find out. Altus is undefeated on the season. They're now a top 10 team. They're a team that looks like they're going to be in the playoffs. Now they battle for seeding. Now they battle for, to host a first round playoff game, contend for the district championship. They face Carl Albert in week 10. They face Guthrie this week. Those are the 2 measuring sticks from this district. And for Reed, you look at the numbers and they're out of this world. Like, they're insane. Throwing the ball, running the ball. He had a game last week where he threw 4 touchdowns. He ran for 4 touchdowns. I've written about this many, many times on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma, but he's running away with the Freshman of the Year award. Normally we announce that in late December, early January. I'm very confident that we can go ahead and just name it now. Reed is the Freshman of the Year for 2025. But now we're going to find out just how talented he is and just how talented this Altus team is, because they get their toughest competition on Friday night. Going on the road and facing Guthrie is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do for a freshman. Really looking forward to seeing how he plays and how the Bulldogs play against a Guthrie team that is playing really solid football right now and looks like a team that could possibly make another run to the state championship this year. Prior running back Carson Hughes is our next player to watch as the Tigers will take on Collinsville on Friday night. And for Hughes, he's one of you talk about underrated players, and Hughes certainly is one of them, because anytime we've talked about Prior this season, most of the attention immediately goes to their passing game and their 3-year starter at quarterback, and how, the Tigers can throw it all over the field and they have so many weapons at wide receiver. But when you watch the Tigers play, Hughes has been a critical part of what they've done offensively. He's a bowling ball of a running back. And in a game that could end up going into the second half, third, fourth quarter, you need that balance on the offensive side of the ball. This is a matchup where Collinsville is going to want to limit what Prior does offensively, limit the opportunities that this Prior offense has. And for Pryor, if they want to play that way, they have the opportunity with Hughes because he is a consistent threat at the running back position. Sallisaw quarterback Case Adams, our next player to watch, as the Black Diamonds look to face Poto on Friday. And if they get a win, then they take one more step. They haven't lost in district play, and their only loss on the season, speaking of Pryor, was to Pryor back in week 0. And for Sallisaw, you beat Poto, and then you take a huge step forward towards that district championship because you've already beaten Broken Bow. You still have Ada on the schedule, but you take another step. And for Adams, he's had a really good season so far. He stepped into that starting quarterback role. Sallisaw was able to shuffle some things around on the offensive side of the ball, and he's had a good season. So when you're talking about facing Poto, who's pretty young, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's an opportunity for Adams to take advantage, but Poto is not going to take it easy on him. It's not going to be easy for Adams, but the Black Diamonds definitely in a good shape in district play. And if Adams can lead them to another win on Friday, things will be looking very good for Sallisaw down the stretch. Mount St. Mary quarterback Roman Manella is our next player to watch, and Roman has had a terrific season. I don't know if this is still the case now. I haven't checked in, but I believe after the 5th game of the season, he still hadn't taken a sack all year. He's put up monster numbers in the passing game and the running game. We've talked about Mount St. Mary and how this team is not only talented this year, but they're set up for a lot of success moving forward just with how young they are. And it starts with Roman at the quarterback position. He came into this year as a first-year starter for the Rockets, but he was not inexperienced because he played for Midwest City before that. Before this season. So he came into this year not as an inexperienced quarterback, and he was a guy who I was looking forward to seeing like what kind of step he made, and he's had a really good season. Now you take on Jones on the road, and we mentioned it earlier just how experienced Jones is. And the defense is nasty. They have players everywhere. So it's the ultimate test from Roman and the rest of this Mount St. Mary offense. Just how explosive can you be when you're taking on one of the toughest defenses in Class 2A1? Poto linebacker Ryder Waddell is our next player to watch. And we mentioned it with the Sallisaw-Poto matchup, how Sallisaw are going to try to take advantage of a relatively young Poto defense. And Waddell is one of those young players. He's only a sophomore, but he's already established himself as one of the top defensive prospects in the state's 2028 class. He's produced at a very high level every single week. They had a big win last week, and he produced at a high level on the defensive side of the ball. He's a tackling machine. He's getting into the backfield. He's forcing turnovers. And so when you look at this matchup with Sallisaw and Poto, Sallisaw is going to want to run the ball. They're still a run-first team despite how well they've been able to play in the past game. But the Poto front 7 and Waddell specifically, they have to be ready for a fight. They have to be ready for a slugfest because Sallisaw is going to want to establish the run. They have some heavy hitters in the backfield that can, they run with some power. And if Waddell can set the tone early on and make Sallisaw one-dimensional, the Pirates have an opportunity to pull off a pretty big upset in Class 4A and specifically throw a huge wrench into the district standings where, almost anything could be possible by the time the playoffs roll around. And then finally, our final player to watch is Putnam City senior defensive lineman Trip Alexander. The Pirates will go on the road and try to take down top-ranked Stillwater on Friday night. And for Alexander, he's definitely the player to watch here. I mentioned it when we were talking about this matchup, how Putnam City's front 7 is a huge key to how this game is going to play out because Stillwater can run the ball with their quarterback. They showed that last week in the win against Choctaw when the QB had 3 touchdowns on the ground, over 100 yards rushing. They also have a running back that ran for over 150 yards in the win over Choctaw last week. So this is a team that can absolutely run the ball. They have a really good offensive line. And so now we get to see it because Alexander is one of the top defensive linemen in the state. I mentioned how talented the front 7 is for Putnam City. Now we get to see it. Now we get to see how they look against one of the better offenses in the state, one of the better offensive lines, one of the better rushing attacks, regardless of class when it comes to Stillwater. So Alexander, one of our favorite players to talk about when you're talking about defensive standouts on the defensive line in the state's 2026 class, because he's your typical defensive tackle that even if he's not making the play in the backfield, he's opening things up for his teammates. He's terrific coming off the ball. He has so many different moves that he can use to beat you. He's an automatic double team. Stillwater's going to need to know where he is at all times. It's good on good. That's what you live for. Those are the matchups you love to talk about. It's one of the better front sevens for Putnam City, going up against one of the better offensive lines and rushing attacks from Stillwater. So good on good. District championship on the line. Can't wait to see what happens in Stillwater on Friday night. So that's a look at the Week 8 players to watch. Again, you can check out our breakdown right now on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. And that does it for this week's edition of the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma Preview Show. Coming up later on prepredzone.com on Thursday, we'll add 3 more names to our Player of the Year watch list. I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Coming up later this week, we'll also have the unveiling of our 2027 rankings, it'll feature the top 150 juniors in the state of Oklahoma as we continue our ranking update on all the classes. Next week, we'll have the senior class with the 2026 group as we update and upgrade and add several mini names to that ranking as well. But you can check out all of our ranking updates, all of our prospect breakdowns right now on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. And then on Friday, I mentioned it, I'll be out at Jones for their matchup against Mount St. Mary. We'll have coverage on social media. We'll have coverage on the website. We'll also have coverage right here on our YouTube channel. And again, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button. This Prep Red Zone Oklahoma YouTube channel has seen a lot of growth since the beginning of the season. We want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for checking out the preview show every single Wednesday, checking out all the game highlights, and we would appreciate you to hit that subscribe button. And while we're at it, we'll throw it out for the website as well. If you want, daily high school football content across the state of Oklahoma. And you've heard where I've been this year. I mean, you can see the game highlights. We've been out in the Panhandle. We've been to southwestern Oklahoma. We've been to northeastern Oklahoma. We've been to eastern Oklahoma with Pecola. We've been to northern, the OKC Metro, the Tulsa Metro. We've been all over the place, and we're just getting started. We have, plenty of games to finish up the regular season. Ton of playoff content coming on the website, as well as this YouTube channel. As we proudly say that we cover the entire state of Oklahoma, and it's true statewide coverage on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. And if you've checked out the website, if you've checked out the YouTube channel this season, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. All right, my thanks to Sand Springs head coach Bobby Klinck, Lawton MacArthur head coach Brett Manning, and Broken Bow head coach Maverick Lang for joining us on this edition of the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma Preview Show. One final time, I'm your host, Michael Knight, the director of Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. We'll see you next week, every single Wednesday, with the PRZ Preview Show. Until then, enjoy the football, everybody.